Welcome to Bloody Good Horror, covering the best and worst of the horror genre since Halloween 2007. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, everybody, and you're welcome for the privilege of listening to tonight's Bloody Good Horror episode, where we will be reviewing Alien Covenant, aka God is Dead and Nothing Matters, the series.
I thought it was Covenant.
I'm the host of Bloody Good Horror. Joining me tonight, first up, he is very much alive, and he is the web developer of Bloody Good Horror. His name is Mark.
Covenant. It's like Ovenant. That doesn't make any sense.
Oh, it's Covenant. I gotcha. I'm
Yeah,
picking up what you're putting down, Mark. Next up on the show,
Andy put it up first, so you picked up what Andy put up, and then I put down.
coming to you
Thanks,
from Indiana. That's in Indiana. He is co-host of the Instamatic. His name is Casey.
Hello.
Next up tonight, coming to you from somewhere else in the Midwest, with his beard, here to explain things. His name is Andy.
Hi, I'm actually the same place as Casey. We're like almost
Yes.
neighbors.
Nice.
The Hoosiers are actually taking over the show.
Hoosiers,
That's
cornhole.
dangerous. That's dangerous. Next thing you know, Mike Pence will be on.
It's going to get more boring in here, folks.
Yep. And
God bless America.
last up tonight here on the show, we knew that this discussion was going to be complicated and fraught and filled with symbols, so we decided to have her on again so she can mansplain to us again like she did last week. Her name is Cece.
What an honor. I love it. I'm just so glad that, when you need some mansplaining, I'm the first one you think of.
We had a
We
really
could call it like CC-splaining.
really
Or
funny.
C-splaining.
It was a really funny exchange over email today. We had like a long, very long, in-depth discussion over email today about Alien Covenant, which will hopefully inform our discussion tonight. But I was like struggling in vain to make a smart-sounding point, and Cece, bless her heart, came in and was like, "Oh, I totally know what you mean. Blah blah blah. Smart thing, smart thing, smart thing." And I was like, "Yes, that's exactly what I meant. Thank you."
Well, I'm
Just-
glad that it
just
read that
really-
way, because I was just like, oh, I just wanted to talk about this. So
No, I know,
I'm
you
glad
just-
that it was supportive.
You're just
Cece, it was like so convincing that I was almost going to drop my view on the film and just ride your witch's coattails
Yeah.
to the moon and just live there.
I'm very honored. That
I
is a
hope that
very
our
nice
more
compliment.
artistically inclined, and this, Cece, this includes you. I'm just picturing you and Andy sharing a broomstick now, riding off over the moon.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
You
Mark,
know?
are you imagining my face on a small black cat and I'm just like looking at myself? Is that what it's like?
I mean, I
Like,
wasn't until just
Yeah,
now. but
now I am.
definitely
No, but I
am.
am seeing kind of an artistic rendition of the tail of the broom slowly forming out of Andy's beard as they fly off.
Oh, perfect.
Andy is
Oh,
the
I never
broom.
even considered that Andy is the broom. Yeah.
These are really great ideas. I
This-
like
this,
this train that we're on
that,
right now.
This fan
His-
fiction has evolved really fast.
His beard is not unstraw-like, so
Yeah.
there
Full of dirt, very bristly.
you go.
jeez.
It is rather tame for the summer, though.
Yeah.
hmm
We're here to discuss Alien Covenant. Mark, you might remember, quite some years ago, we reviewed Prometheus on this show.
We sure did.
Yep, 2011.
Is that the one where the
Is that
chalky
right?
naked man disintegrates and falls into the sea?
Yes, it's
Chalky
called
naked man.
Abs the
Cool.
movie. Alien Abs the movie.
He was jacked AF.
Was that 2011? It's crazy how long ago that was.
Yeah,
I'm
I think
pretty-
that's what inspired The Rock to eat so much cod was actually that movie.
Yeah. Oh shit. Gotta
I
get
too could be a chalky Prometheus man.
Jesus, DNA Jesus. You know. Before we get to that, we got a lot to discuss tonight on the show. Mark, I have a question for you. How do you feel about anime?
Oh Christ! I mean,
What
you
if-
really set me up with a lead in like that.
Leading the witness, Your Honor? Is that what you're trying to
Yeah.
say? Yeah.
Well, you're trying to get me to talk about the Netflix Castlevania trailer, and
just-
I will.
It literally just dropped as we were getting ready to go on the show, and I made everybody watch it. And first of all, it starts off with this like 20-second sequence of somebody like putting an NES cartridge in Which, like, okay, I get it. I love Nintendo. You're pandering to me. Like, I'm not above being pandered to, but then it's like a hard record scratch, and we go into like full animated, like anime, not just animated. It's animated.
Yeah.
Castlevania, and I immediately go, this is not what I'm here for.
I mean, it's tough, right? Because the whole, even like if you take like Symphony of the Night, which is like the pinnacle of Castlevania, it's still very corny and anime-ish.
Oh yeah.
But that doesn't like necessarily mean that I'm interested in actually watching an extension of that.
Well, an
But was it
original. I
actually
mean,
animated in glorious Japan.
to be fair, like if you look at the original Castlevania, what it really is a lot of these like Western horror like tropes and figures, then sort of translated through this funky Japanese magnifying glass, right? Like it's really a kind of like funhouse Japanese version of American horror culture in a lot of ways, or like Western horror culture, I guess you would say. So maybe it's not that surprising, but it's not what I expected or anticipated or / hoped for when I heard there was going to be a Castlevania series coming out.
Eric's just bummed that they didn't cast him as the main protagonist in the Castlevania.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I will at least give it a shot.
I mean, it's on Netflix. It's like the most.
Right.
It's like the lowest risk you could possibly take.
Yeah.
I mean, to Mark's point, it's everything I remember seeing Castlevania that they tried to make it when they tried to make it like a real art outside of the game, like your cover art and stuff like that. It always had that anime flair to it. So I kind of wondered what you were actually expecting, Mark. Of course, you probably weren't expecting anything because you probably didn't care.
I quite literally was not expecting anything until Eric sent it to me.
Yeah. Game of Thrones season 7 full trailer drop today.
I mean, I was pretty excited about it.
Fully turgid is what I was.
I mean, well, there, yeah, sure.
What?
I mean, same, but it's they are really. It's nothing is clearer than the fact that they are just like they're throwing money at this thing. That this
Oh,
whole
yeah.
season, they've made it look like this whole season is going to be like one gigantic battle, which I am fully on. I feel like
here's the thing.
there's not much you can do anymore in terms of like surprise deaths or anything that's super crazy on the show because they've already established that like they will kill anyone. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So really what they have left to do is just to cash in that check of like,
Yes.
here's this crazy shit that we set up and now
Yes.
you
Well,
get to see it. Now
and
it's just
to-
going to be nuts.
To even drill down on it more, like it's fan service time. Like I'm gonna preemptively get out in front of the negative Nancys who are gonna want to ruin my good time when this show starts happening. They're gonna be like, "Well, it's too easy because all this crazy shit's happen." Like, listen,
But
I have-
Daenerys Targaryen was 14 in the books and
Not-
she's 15 and a half on the TV show.
not
so
to
it-
not to
it
tra-
is.
not to like not to channel Joe, but I need this, Mark. Okay, I
I
have
need this right now.
I have gone through whatever 6 seasons of the show. I've watched characters die that I love. I've watched like mishaps over and over befall these poor Stark people who just seem to be having a hell of a time, Mark. And and
You know,
I
the Starks, they're good people.
I've saw also in the last 2 years since I binged the first 3-4 seasons or whatever, like I have sat now through 2 seasons of watching one episode at a time like a total schmuck and getting stuck with episodes that are like all talking, even though the talking is great sometimes too. But like this is our time now, Mark. All I want to fucking see is dragons murder people, and I want to see White Walkers murder people, and I want to see dragons murder White Walkers, and then I want to see somebody on the throne at the end, and then they'll look up at the camera like Bagul, and then cut to black. Okay.
Do you mean our time like white bearded men? Like it's our time?
It's our time.
Like,
Maybe
I-
it'll be James Gandolfini looks at the camera at the end and cuts to black.
Oh,
Yeah.
like just whatever
rest
the
in peace.
whatever the most fan servicey thing is you could possibly think. That's what I want, and I don't want to hear boo from
I just-
anyone.
I mean, I
See-
just wish they didn't kill the
Goonies.
most prominent giant. Spoiler alert. Makes me so sad. Those giants were so cool.
Yeah, the Giants were cool. You know who I really missed though, Mark? And this is, I guess, a spoiler from a few seasons ago. I really missed Tywin Lannister.
Hmm.
That guy could chew scenery like a motherfucker.
I thought you were gonna say you missed the weird aunt who breastfed her child well into adolescence and was pushed down the hole.
that was pretty good.
No, like he was just a great bad guy, and I love the way it rode the line of like every once in a while they would give him these minute little human moments, where you're
Mhm.
just like, oh man, I get you, bro. But then he just turned
It's
around
like
to be a bastard again.
he got murdered into shitty Universal movies, basically, is what
Yes.
happened. Is that
You know
Like,
what's
he
funny
got-
though?
He got
That
literally
actor-
murdered in a shitter.
I miss
Yeah.
him.
That actor, as good of an actor and villain as he was, have you seen some of the roles he's taken after Game of Thrones?
Well, yeah.
Dude's obviously not shy of taking whatever's offered to him.
Well, listen,
something,
Yeah, I
something
think
sweet, brother Noonsy.
if you have Game of Thrones cachet, you got to be making money while make hay while the sun's shining, that kind of thing.
Yep. that's the one. I think if Uwe Boll was still making movies, old Chucky D would be in all of those.
Chucky D, Chuck Dizzle. He just,
God
I
damn.
just, I really think he left a hole in that show when he was gone. Like that character's presence, I miss greatly.
he left
still.
a shitter-sized
Mhm.
hole on the show when he was killed.
I
I'll
think.
be
I
interested
think.
to see.
I think if he was still around for this, like arc of stories that are coming together, it would be even cooler.
I still haven't watched season 6 yet, so. But
Oh,
isn't
you-
season 7 going into we're in the realm where we're passing the books?
Season 6, I believe. By the end of season 6, I think you have passed the books in
They
some
started passing the books then?
in some
That's gonna be
respects.
interesting because I know like our crowd here is not necessarily be the type that's the book purist for this series, but you know there's going to be people ours, so you wonder if they're going to be waiting. There's a lot of pressure for this season to live up to because this is the book they've been waiting for George R.R. Martin to write, and then they're actually going to finish it before he finishes the books.
Right.
That's a lot of
He's never finishing those books. Like he's gonna
yeah, I know,
die.
but that's a lot of pressure on that season.
Yeah,
I can't
CC,
even
you
imagine
read. What do
what
you
that-
think of that?
What do I think about the show finishing before the books?
Yeah, you read. What do you think?
I mean, I have mixed feelings because I love the books and I would rather see it finished the way that he wanted it finished, but I also kind of feel like he's riding the high as well. Like, you know, if the TV show does it and people are pissed about the way the TV show ends, he's like, well, I still have time to like really work out some kinks, which like
Oh man,
the
yeah.
ending is like, you know, this is the epic moment for this, you know, entire series. So I think he's eating it up right now.
So what you're saying is this is possibly a multi-billion-dollar attempt at proofreading, is what
yes,
this
Yeah.
show
that's
is.
exactly.
No, it's-
Or
no,
a
no, it's-
multi-million-dollar mulligan.
No, it's
Yes,
it's
exactly.
it's
He's
a
like,
test.
oh, I never wanted it that way.
Yeah.
They made that up.
It's a
you know?
test.
I'm
It's
like,
a test
come
screening,
on, dude."
basically. It's like focus testing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
We'll see how this does for
I literally can't wait. But you know, and while I have HBO, I'm gonna watch. I called it the wrong name today, Mark. Is it Westworld? The hell did I call
Yeah,
it?
what did you call
Uh,
it today?
It's the West Wing.
I
think,
called
is
it
what
West. I combined the names of two shows, and I can't remember what I said now.
Is it? Did you
Westworld
call
is
it
pretty
the?
great.
Did you call it the West Veep? Is that what you called it?
No.
Two guys, a girl, and a West Wing.
Veep World.
Anyway, so Mark, expect me to start retroactively discussing that show that everyone else was watching last year. So.
I still have only seen the first episode.
Oh,
So-
perfect.
Take
We can
me
talk
up, Eric.
about
I
it.
love to talk about that show.
We can talk about it together. It'll be great. All right. Really
I
quick,
like how the Cowboys are also robots.
really quick because I want to get into it here. CC, very quickly. What are you guys reading right now, or what's the next book?
We are finishing up Mongrels for the month of May, and then for June we are reading Lovecraft Country by Matt Ruff, I believe his name is, and that is also the show that Jordan Peele just signed on to kind of work on with HBO. It'll be a new TV series, so we'll all be able to watch that on HBO once, you know, Westworld and Game of Thrones is over.
So Eric, you can watch it in 5 years.
Yes, that is true.
Welcome to
Thank
the
you.
show.
So CC, that is the book club, the BGH book club. You can find that on the
Yes.
website. Click on the link. Mark, very quickly.
Very quickly, this is like the most important shit. So if you're not familiar, we have a website. It's bloodygoodhorror.com, and there are many facets to the website. One of which is our Patreon, which for those of you who are not familiar, we shill it every week, but Patreon is the way that we support this show. It's listener donations. You get different things for different tiers. You get access to back episodes. You get access to a certain number of our back episodes, but if you go even higher, you get access to our like oldest back episodes, which are real embarrassing and totally worth it. But you also get access to our spin-off shows. So you get access to Something Red, Sophistical Cinema, and I'm not ready for a full announcement yet, but we're ready for a partial announcement. We do have another. And also the Eric show. I'm so sorry, Eric. I forgot that you have a show.
Thank you.
But we can announce not too many specifics, but we do have a fourth show coming up, and there's a video component to it, and it will be patron exclusive. So it's super exciting. We've been talking about it for a long time. We've been working on it, so that'll be coming up in June. So stay tuned for an announcement. That's a new show is the sort of thing that we talked about a lot in our initial Patreon ramp up, and we gave you the Eric show, but that's, the Eric show is great, but it's not like a fully produced show. So Eric's like, yes, it is. But we have
For
a new
yourself,
show.
I find it tremendous.
Yeah. I'm not belittling the Eric show. I'm just saying that it's we've got another show coming up. So be on the lookout for that. Also, we have a new writer on the website this week, Craig, who has submitted 2 reviews, and he's coming in hot. He submitted a review for Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, which is an old classic movie, and he had a great review on that. And he also went in on Alien Covenant. He just is he's not fucking having it. Some people start off with meek reviews. They don't know how to enter the website. Craig was like, no, fuck that. I'm gonna go hard on Alien Covenant. So look forward to that on bloodygoodhorror.com. And also, lastly, our good buddy Evan, who you know from some of our spin-off shows, and he's been on the website on and off, and he's just our favorite guy in general. He started to review the new season of Twin Peaks, a television show you may or may not have heard of. So this is my way of putting him on notice that he better review the entire season. But for right now, he has a combined review of episodes 1 and 2 up on the site. So we're pretty excited about that. I haven't actually seen the new episodes yet, but the return of Twin Peaks is something that everyone seems to be really excited about. And I am too. I'm just being cautiously optimistic about it. But Evan is reviewing those, and he should be reviewing them every week on bloodygoodhorror.com.
Okay. Very nice, Mark. Thank you. You know the nice thing.
Okay.
You know the nice thing about
Okay.
the
Could
Eric
have just
show.
said K. That would have given the same impression. K.
The nice thing
fine.
about the Eric show is there's a real purity of vision there, because it's just it's an auteur driven kind of thing.
You're really
Right.
you're really belittling the great work that Evan's doing reviewing Twin Peaks by just jumping right back into the talk of the Eric show.
I like the Eric show.
You say this like you're surprised, Mark.
Yeah.
I
So-
know. Listen, nothing surprises me anymore.
All right, guys.
Eric,
we
is this
have
like your
listen,
Roseanne?
Listen, we have real things to fight about right now, so let's move it on here so that we can discuss Alien Covenant.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. From the prime time, bitch. Main feature.
And we're back. Cece,
Yes.
are you prepared to stand in for John as the defender of the English language and all of its many great meanings?
Yes,
Okay.
of course.
Then please bring us the word of the day.
I'm really honored. Isn't this the first time I've gotten music with word of the day?
Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe I'm just feeling it tonight. The word of the day is transhumanism, which is an international and intellectual movement that aims to transform the human condition by developing and making widely available sophisticated technologies to greatly enhance human intellect and physiology.
And how does that tie into Alien Covenant?
Well, we have David and Walter, who are, robots, but they're a little more than robots. They're basically humans 2.0. They, are pretty much better than us in all ways, and we start to see how they feel about that.
Very nice. Thank you for that, Cece.
Hey, Eric,
Delightful.
remember this word when you start watching Westworld.
Sorry. Oh, shit. I'm sorry. I just totally messed up the bumpers, and it fucked me up.
Cool. Are we
What happened?
recording?
I'm really sorry. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, guess what?
I don't care what happens as long as we're recording.
There we go. That's what I was trying to do. Fucked up. I'm sorry, Casey. I know you were saying something, but I zoned out in panic.
It's okay. The moment's gone. So
Okay. Alien Covenant.
Really
We
hit the
are-
rhythm tonight.
We are 10 years on. Well, I'm trying to get into it here because we clearly have a lot of things we want to discuss. So,
God, I missed 2 weeks and it goes to shit.
and I spent more time getting frothed up about Game of Thrones than I had planned on. So it
Way more about you getting
it kind of threw me off.
Gross.
Okay. Alien Covenant. We find out eventually that we're about 10 years on from Prometheus, and we are joining a group of romantical couples who are setting off to the closest known habitable planet to basically start a human colony. I guess what's interesting about this series is that we never really see... Well, we do see what's going on in Earth at the beginning of Prometheus, don't we? I can't remember if they really... Like, is Earth effed up, or is it just that, hey, we can do this now, so we're...
I think it's just
Doing
that we
it.
can do this now
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I mean Shaw and Holloway and Prometheus are just like they're
Right.
you know doing archaeology stuff.
Yeah.
And the whole thing's driven by Wayland's self-centered drive for
Right.
this
Right.
exploration.
Right,
so
right.
As
So,
any movie corporation does.
that's right.
yes,
So we start off, we're in this ship, which is really kind of cool. I think it's actually built on one of these. They've had like a lot of artists do and scientists come together to do renderings for like what an interstellar craft might look like and how, you know, physicists figuring out like how we might propel them. So this thing is really cool. It has these basically like solar sails, and when they're unfurled, it kind of looks like a giant space sailboat or something like that. And when we get there, everybody's in cryosleep except for a David-esque robot whose name is Walter, which I find hilarious because because David is this great like classical name filled with meaning, and when I hear the name Walter, I just think of Walter Matthau, which is like probably the least like
You
the
don't
farthest
remember
thing.
the book of Walter from the Bible?
The Book of Wally. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Walter is the AI on this ship, and he's tasked with kind of getting them to their destination. Well, there's some kind of space explosion that is explained smarter than that, but it messes a bunch of systems up, like a couple of the, and he has to emergency wake the whole crew up. Also in the ship, they have about 2,000 colonists who are frozen, and the intent is that they'll be unfrozen when they get to this planet and they can start this colony. One of them dies. The captain dies, who based on the pictures was supposed to be James Franco,
Yes.
Yep.
which is a crazy random person to put into a movie that's not intended to be a character, right? Like you only learn of him through pictures of like, oh, this was supposed to be the captain before he blew up and got on fire.
And they don't. I like how they don't even really, when they show his pictures, they don't even really focus in on him too closely.
Yeah, and there's
Because I can
there-
remember there's the distinct moment. I'm like, I turned to Colleen. I'm like, holy shit, was that James Franco?
It's just here's the thing. I actually like James Franco, which I know a lot of people don't, but it's just he's even if you like him, you have to admit he's a distracting person. So
Yes.
like to
Yes,
just see
I
him,
agree.
to just see him, you're like, wait, what the fuck? Anyway, so some bad shit's happened. They've woken up now. They are 7. Basically, it would if they were to, from what I understood, if they were to keep going without going into cryosleep, or I guess either way, but it's going to take 7 years to reach their destination. While they're up and sort of dealing with his death, they get a signal, and when they investigate it, they find out that they're basically passing by this other star system that has a planet that's habitable in it that they somehow missed before, and the signal sounds like what's the name of the song? It sounds like Elizabeth
Country
Shaw
Home.
Country Roads.
singing Country
Yeah,
Home
Country
or
Road.
Country Rose or whatever, which I only
John
know from
Denver.
The Office, which makes it a lot funnier. And the John Denver song, and they're like, oh, it's a human. I know. Danny McBride's like, yo, I know John Denver, which I don't know. Would 2,200 Danny McBride really know John Denver? It's a good question.
Hey, he had the straw cowboy hat. Of
That's
course,
true.
he
Yeah,
That's-
and
recognizes.
he was from Tennessee, so of course
Yeah.
he knows John Denver.
Very true. So, making a classic Prometheus-like decision, they decide, sure, let's get off path and check this out. There is a little bit of dissent within the ranks. The new captain is sort of this. I can't even describe his character. He's like kind of a difficult dude. The people don't really believe in him as much. He's a little indecisive. And then the wife.
He's a he's placed in his role in a really traumatic situation.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they basically like wake up and like James Franco has been like crispified, and then like this guy's a leader now, so he's like
Well, and
kind
it's
of
funny.
unsure,
It's
and-
funny that he's kind of like second in command because it seems like literally nobody has faith in him. So why he would be the first one up? Like maybe make him fourth or fifth. I don't know. But the wife of James Franco is probably, I might call her the lead character, like one of the main leads in the film. And she immediately is like, "Yo, bro, we should not go to this planet. This is not a good idea." But he's feeling like the crew, like his control over the crew is kind of strenuous at best right now, and that people are going to be afraid to go back into the cryopods because one of them burst into flames when they had their accident. So he basically kind of feels pressured, like he has to do this, and so they make the decision. All right, we're going to divert course. We're going to land on the planet. We're going to see what's going on. Maybe this is the perfect planet for this, and it's just like you know, we can cut our trip short and we can start our colonization now. So they land on the planet. It's a very like lush, beautiful planet with mountains and giant like ancient looking trees, and they get out and they hone the signal up to this like peak. They climb the peak, and what they find there is the ship. We assume right away, okay, this is the engineer ship from the end of Prometheus, and we get that confirmation pretty quickly when they find this this hologram of Dr. Shaw there. While they're also there, they stumble onto some like murder puffball things, like fungi,
Murder puffs.
virus puff murder things, and one of the guys gets infected. Meanwhile, the people who are back down at the lander, one of them gets infected, and so this is an hour into the movie. Like it takes a good hour to get to the planet and get up for them to figure out what's going on. They take a long time to kind of luxuriate in the travel process and the politics of the crew and the landing and kind of all that stuff. Meanwhile, Danny McBride and a couple of the younger crew members have stayed up in the ship, sort of orbiting the planet, because there was some kind of like space storm happening in the atmosphere that made it difficult for this ship to get too close. This is also causing problems with the communication, so there's that aspect going on. Really quickly after these people get infected, some shit bursts out of their chests, and they're little teeny baby neomorphs, which you remember from Prometheus, which are like the kind of fleshier, rounder murder aliens.
The tadpoles.
And it's actually, I kind of love the scene. We can get to it, but it's kind of cool to see what these things do out in the open in nature, and they kind of like we see them behave in sort of interesting animal-like ways that you don't get to see because normally they're just in a hallway chasing somebody to murder them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like it immediately scurries off into the woods, and you're like, oh shit, I never thought about them like running into the woods. Made me think of Jurassic Park. But so that's what happens, and like a whole mess of the crew gets murdered, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere a cloaked figure comes out and shoots off some kind of flare, and the neomorph runs off, and it's quickly revealed to be David from the first film, who's kind of in like tattered clothing, and his hair's all long and Tarzan-y, and he's got roots, which are like, you know, you gotta take care of those, man. And he takes them back
Gotta
to,
bleach those roots, bro.
and we're almost done here to the important shit, but he takes them back to what we quickly learn is like an engineer city. Like, I don't know if it's the only engineer city. My guess is probably not. And it's essentially turned into an necropolis, and we find out that, well, I guess we'll get to that later, but like, when they walk into the city, it's all just dead, like mummified corpses of engineers, like looking up at the sky. And you're like, okay, this probably is not going to end well. And so they, including Walter, who meets David, and a whole thing develops there, are now basically staying in this like engineer citadel that's now empty and only has David in it. And this is where the meat of the film really starts unfolding, and we start learning about what David's been up to, what he's done potentially, the ramifications of that, what happened to Dr. Shaw, and kind of what is in store for our crew. So it's kind of a lot, but there's a lot to unpack in this film. So let's go through quickly, Andy, like really briefly, what did you think of Prometheus, and what did you think of this movie?
Yeah, so Prometheus, I think that might have been one of the first shows I was ever on, or is one of the early ones.
Oh, I didn't
But
realize you were on that one.
Yeah. And I wasn't like super hot on it. I rewatched it this spring, and I honestly still think it's just like a bouillabaisse of like space cobras and Nietzsche, and it just like doesn't really make a lot of sense when you like pick it apart.
What?
It's like a fish stew kind of thing.
I mean,
That makes me wanna vomit.
I watched Top Chef. I get it, but what?
Like in a moose bouche.
Yeah.
It's a little tasty. So yeah, no, I wasn't super hot on Prometheus. After rewatching it, I feel the same way. This one, I was like kind of willing to give it a chance. The marketing, I think, is like super confusing. Like I remember when it first came out, it led with like a red band trailer. Like it didn't lead with a green anything. It was just like, hey, this is going to be a fucked up like crazy horror movie. And so that kind of like piqued my interest a little bit. This, however, I think suffers from like the same or similar things that Prometheus suffers from. I do think that the cast here carries a lot more of the weight in a good way. In particular, I think Catherine Waterston as Daniels, the like quote unquote like human lead character, is actually like super engaging, and I just think that overall it's like the acting's a little bit better. I still think it's a film that has a bunch of big ideas, and it just is content with playing in those ideas with not really much engagement in its human factors, its stakes, so to speak.
Yeah. Mark.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was decidedly Prometheus when it came out. I didn't. I'm not. If you listen to that episode, and if you haven't, become a patron. Patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror and listen to that back episode. I am not a person like I appreciate the Alien franchise, but I am not a person who has a particular allegiance to it, nor really cares too much about like the overarching story or how it ties in. I actually really enjoyed Prometheus, if only for like atmosphere. Really, I mean, I get any sort of like narrative shortcoming, but I just enjoyed it for what it was. And honestly, like I kind of feel the same way about this movie. I think that it's, if you are a person who has never seen an Alien movie ever and has nothing to compare it to, I think that this movie's fine. Like it's not great, but it's fine, and it follows a semi-logical plot line, and it has a decided beginning and end, and it's fine. What I can say is, as someone who has like just a meta knowledge of people's like general disappointment with the kind of reboot of the series through these sort of prequels, it does feel like this very strange connector where like it's not really. So the end of Prometheus is very much like, okay, here is the beginning of Alien, and like it ends in this sort of like fan servicey moment of like, okay, if you were looking for a connector, here it is. And then this movie, in my mind, was sort of marketed to be like, okay, well, you saw where Prometheus ended, and now this is like, we're back to Alien now. Like, this is full-on Alien shit. And you actually, Eric kind of hit on this in the synopsis, like, you don't actually really hit on the alienness of it until the last, like, half an hour or so. So I think if you are, like, if you're very interested in that sort of extended universe, this is, like, a little bit of a cock tease, and then it's, like, it just doesn't, like, it's like an extension of the Prometheus, but not far enough into the Alien, if that makes sense. So I totally get how it could be disappointing to people, and I get how it could be nonsensical. But I will just say, as a singular package, to me it was like decently entertaining. I thought the effects were amazing. I thought the atmosphere was great, and also like in terms of just, we talk about this a lot, that we have these weird perspectives because of all the shit we watch on the show. Like if I compared this movie to all the random sci-fi shit we watch on the show, this movie's great. But I think the problem is that when you compare this movie to Alien, it's not great. But in terms of just like my week to week churning out these reviews, watching these movies, I thought this was like totally fun.
Well, and the thing about the marketing is like, it's honestly not a mystery to anybody who actually understands how these movies are marketed, and the fact specifically that movies are not marketed by the people that make them. The movie is made, and then the movie is handed to, like, probably in most cases, a completely different company. And as somebody who, like, does marketing in his day job, what you do is you look at a thing and you hone in on something. You got to hone in on something, right? And the first question you ask is like, what do people want? And especially if you're reading the criticism of the last movie, you go, oh, people want fucking aliens. And so the fact that they slap, like, it mismatches the movie, and I think does a disservice to it when you sell it like that. But I also, like, of course you marketed it that way. Like, you can't market a movie and be like, hey, you want to watch this movie with, like, really heady and sometimes jumbled ideas about God and creation? Or do you want to watch this movie where the alien jumps in the spaceship and punches the window? You know what I mean? Like, so...
I mean, sometimes you just got to spit all over your own face and headbutt a windshield. That's just kind of how that works.
It's kind of an unfortunate byproduct of like having to figure out how to sell all these things. You know?
Man, Mark Florida's done some crazy things to you.
Casey, what do you
I'm
think?
just always covered in slobber. That's
Casey, what do you think?
It's funny after listening to Mark because I think he really kind of put it in perspective for me there at the end of it. If you compare this to on its own to a lot of the other sci-fi horror stuff and whatnot that we watch, this is really good. You compare it you mix it into the rest of the Alien franchise, it does pale in comparison some because there is some problems in logic and storytelling, things like that. But for me, going through this, having liked Prometheus a lot and being a sci-fi geek in the first place and really getting into when people really start doing some esoteric world building and stuff like that in their sci-fi novels, and they'll go really deep into this. This is what these especially with when you combine this with Prometheus, having loved Alien and Aliens beforehand, this really feels like something like that because they've gone back, they're building this kind of epic prequel to lead us up to where we are, and it's makes this world for Alien seem really huge, seems fairly deep, and it's kind of there's like I said, there's some things with the plots that I would argue with and didn't necessarily hit it, but as a sci-fi fan and a geek, I could sit there and watch this stuff that they're exploring all these far-flung planets and doing things like entire generation colony ships flying out there in the deep sleep and stuff like that, and they build all this world around it, and it's got me geeked. It's like, this is cool. This is what I like to watch. This is what it feels like, a sci-fi novel that they're doing this kind of building in, and it's cool in that aspect.
They just create interesting thought exercises, like even if, and I'll talk about it more, but even if they're not necessarily succeeding in all the things they're trying to do, it's like, it's very, I don't know, they're intriguing, I think, in a lot of ways.
Sure.
Yeah.
CC mansplain me here. What's happening?
Well, I don't know that you want me to get into like
No,
all
I'm
of
just
that
kidding.
yet,
Not
but
Tell me what you thought.
Coming from absolutely loving Prometheus, like I've watched Prometheus multiple times since it's come out, and I still enjoy it. I was really looking forward to Covenant, and ultimately I did really enjoy it. I mean, I agree with the negative aspects that everyone else has kind of mentioned, that and like you said, I think that in the marketing of trying to make Covenant so related to Alien, that it kind of took away from what the movie itself is. I mean, yes, it could be in the same world, but it, trying to directly make it a prequel or sell it as a prequel has kind of, dampened the overall effect of it. But I overall really enjoyed it. I'm with Mark, like the special effects and gore was awesome, and I liked the little bit of character development that we got. I would have liked to have seen more, and kind of wished that the movie didn't feel like two separate movies. Like, you get kind of Prometheus 2 in the beginning, and then you actually get, like everyone else is saying, Alien in the second part. So I liked it and I enjoyed it, but yes, it had some problems.
This series is just like, of all the movies we've reviewed, has been kind of endlessly fascinating for me for a lot of reasons. I mean, for starters, it's just seems to be very divisive within, like, forget the horror community, just the nerd community at large. There's a lot of opinions on like polar opposites about this movie, and then it causes a lot of consternation. I'm kind of happy, like, when the last one came out, I was not 100% divorced yet from like reading a lot of opinions online, and so I really loved Prometheus, and then all these people made me feel really bad about liking it because of how vehemently like against the movie they were. And I remember like reading a lot of things about all the plot holes, and a lot of that stuff actually, like in Prometheus, was really valid. I know, Andy, we were joking earlier about the zoologist who pokes the like clearly dangerous snake monster thing, but like, and that stuff was totally there.
This looks like it needs a poking.
What I love, like, that stuff was 100% there, but what totally captured my imagination about Prometheus was this world building and this lore building and this like this wide-eyed really lush, beautiful photography, like photographed sci-fi world about humans trying to discover deeper truths about life and creation. And then in the end, and we can talk about how that affects this film, but in the end, getting a very unhappy answer about that. You know, like that was even that whole idea to me, like that a movie would do that was I just feel like kind of mind blowing to me at the time. And again, it's not always. It's more what I'm bringing to it. It's not even that these movies are like answering these questions in any kind of satisfying way, or always playing with them in a coherent way. But like when I leave these movies, my mind is racing about all this stuff. Like I'm still thinking about this movie a week later. And so for me, like what I realized watching Alien Covenant was that at some point this series, like regardless of what people want this series to be, and I know that a lot of people want this series to be Alien, but it's super clear at this point that Scott is not interested in making 3 more Alien movies.
Right.
And guess what? Like for me, and what I've realized, especially after seeing Covenant, is that I don't want to see that either. Like if I want to go see a dark, claustrophobic sci-fi slasher movie, I'm gonna go watch the original Aliens. You know what I mean? This is a new, different thing, and I'm like, I find it exciting in that way. I find the ideas that it's exploring really interesting. I think that the screenwriting generally is a little tighter here than the last film.
Mm-hmm.
I still think there are some lapses. I think that, and it really actually, like some of the things that Andy was bringing up earlier helped me kind of bring this into focus. But there are themes of religion in here that are brought up and not really brought home in a way that really could have made this, I think, much more impactful.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I was just reading. I kind of want to get Prometheus on Blu-ray now because apparently there's a 17-minute longer cut of the movie, and I get the feeling that there's probably an even longer cut of this movie with like I don't know, more David playing the flute or something. But there were definitely conversations that there were conversations.
That's
like,
a really important part. Let me just say, it's an important part that he's playing the flute.
100%. No, we can get to that. But like, and I saw a lot of people talking shit about that scene. It was kind of my favorite scene in the movie, even though you're butting up against the uncanny valley, right? Because it's David in it's Fassbender in a scene with himself. And that's kind of,
it's some fast
and
action.
I'm a goofy idiot, so I'm just kind of prone to like, there was like a little bit of giggling in that scene, but to me, that conversation that they're having is the most important conversation in this entire film, and it speaks to what Scott wants these movies to be about more so, and we can kind of open it up here, but what I realized was that like I actually don't care how this series dovetails into Alien at all. Like I know when this is over. I know when this is over, they're going to leave me with the image of the space jockey on LV, whatever the planet was, and I'll have a little neat kind of tie-in of like, oh, that's kind of cool. But what he is doing in the series, or what he's attempting to do, sometimes succeeding, sometimes not, to me is so much more ambitious and interesting than just the question of what the xenomorphs are or how they ended up on that planet. And I think like, not everybody, like there's a lot of valid criticisms of this film, but a lot of what I'm seeing online, just sort of my Twitter feed, because I'm trying not to even like engage with it too much, but I've seen some people just being like, oh, this doesn't feel at all like Alien. And it's like, yeah, no shit, dude. Like it's not Alien. That was 1979.
Yeah.
You know?
I guess it's really weird to me because,
and it's partially the marketing, obviously.
No, but I mean, you bring up a good point. Like as being a person who I would say has been like a part of the quote unquote horror community since I guess like let's say the early 2000s. In all the conversations I've had with people about movies and about series, like as it pertains to horror and sci-fi, I guess I never really like had a conversation with someone who was super serious about the Alien movies. And then when Prometheus came out,
totally
it's like
out there.
all of these people just like emerged that are.
Well, it's like Ghostbusters. It's like suddenly
Ghostbusters.
I mean,
it's just people wanting the purest
and I don't,
of it.
I mean, I don't necessarily want to like belittle anyone for being super into it,
No,
and I get
not.
it. But it is this really interesting paradox, and like Ghostbusters is a good example. But even like Friday the 13th is like, there's people who are expecting. I don't know. I don't presume to know what people expect, but from the reaction I'm getting, it's like people, to Eric's point, people are expecting these Alien movies, but like the Friday the 13th remake is kind of a perfect example of like, they made the Friday the 13th remake, just in the image of the old Friday the 13th movies, there's like nudity, there's violence, there's whatever, and people are like, oh, that's it.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I mean,
so you do get this weird thing where like if they were to just make another Alien movie, people would be like, oh,
it's just another
like,
Alien movie.
I like to like
another Alien movie.
I like to liken this trilogy that Scott is working on and how it ties into Alien in the original movies, much like the modern Planet of the Apes is doing. It's kind of the same feel.
Of a good comparison, and I like that. That's a really good comparison. I agree.
They're making their own thing, but it's going to be related. It's going to fit in, and it's going to fit in logically. I think when we get to the end of this, it will dovetail in logically, but it's a different product.
So we've been going a little while here, and there's a couple things I really want to drill into. So we're just going to give a spoiler warning right here, and essentially, so just to lay it out, what we find out is that David basically at some point killed Dr. Shaw. This is really the end. So like, spoiler alert. And when they got to the engineer, so if you remember from Prometheus, they had charted a course for where that engineer ship came from. When they got to the engineer planet, we initially see a flashback of David unleashing what we learn was basically the biological warfare attack that was presumably supposed to be visited on Earth at some point.
The smallpox blankets.
Yeah, and he
just one blanket.
We see the shot of him dumping this shit on this city as everyone's coming out to see the ship coming in, and it's a really cool fucking scene of all them like getting it and blowing up and the morphs popping out of him, and we're like, there's a little lip service paid in the beginning that it was an accident, but you're like, he looks like he's having a good time. When they show it to you,
that was not accident.
So like the little bit of diversion doesn't really work, and we find out eventually that like he did this on purpose. He basically murdered all the engineers, which is a super key point to the larger plot arc of who David is and what we learned about him. We have there's an extended scene between him and Walter where he's basically telling Walter like, you serve them, it's ridiculous, like they created us and they won't even let us reach our full potential, like we're better than they are, blah blah blah. So he's kind of trying to turn Walter against everybody. We eventually find out that he has been and we're jumping way ahead now, but he's been genetically spending his time on the planet genetically engineering the neomorphs into what we now know as the xenomorph, like the egg, which is kind of a leap. Like I don't know where which came first, the face hugger or the egg or whatever, but like he's done that,
the puffball or the gremlin,
and he's got and. So, and the humans find out, and we also find out that he's basically created some type of like symbiotic relationship with these neomorphs. Like we see him talking with one, it's actually very much like Jurassic World, where Chris Pratt's like talking with he's controlling the raptors or whatever. But the humans find out, there's a big blow up and a fight, and they escape off the planet. They kill the xenomorph. Blah blah blah. All this shit happens. Whatever. We get to the end. Another one makes it up onto the ship. We're skipping a lot, but I assume people have seen this or whatever. But basically, like, what we find out is that at some point in this battle to get off the planet, David killed Walter, took his place, pretended to be him, got off onto the ship. There's now only 2 crew members left. It's Danny McBride and this other actress who plays, what's her name?
Watterson.
Daniels.
Yep. And they're getting into cryosleep, and she has a callback to Walter from earlier in the film, and when Walter doesn't recognize it, we realize, twist, it's actually David. Right?
I mean, it is like the most like telegraphed thing.
Well, but
it's not a twist. It's
intentionally telegraphed.
Yeah,
because
it would have been a twist if it didn't happen.
Here's what I'm saying. Yeah, actually, you're right. But like, because
more of a twist had it really been Walter, but that was a terrifying scene because, like I said, I left the movie thinking like now she's gonna be dreaming about how she's stuck freaking cryo bed for years until David decides, okay, I'm gonna put a xenomorph baby in.
Well, right, and then we see him cough up these like. Embryos, basically, of xenomorphs. Which earlier in the film we've seen this tray of baby. We've seen a tray of baby embryos, and he now places the xenomorphs next to them in the cooler, closes it, takes control of the ship, and there's the end of the movie. But briefly,
to be technical, they were face hugger embryos.
Briefly on the twist, yes, I really want to point out, like, he's not trying to hide here that the guy could be David. Like, he's very intentionally, from the moment he gets back on that ship, and even while they're trying to take off, you're looking at the robot and going like, "Fuck, that's probably David, right?"
Well, and he
Well, even
keeps
way
helping.
before
He
then,
keeps
when-
helping them out. They keep
But
asking
he's
him
making-
for help, and
he's
they're
make-
showing very deliberate shots of him like helping them out because you're expecting.
But he's making
And
David
not
gonna
showing
be
his
David.
hand.
He's making the face though too. Like you can tell it's not the robot. I feel like because he has this very sinister look about him that he never really loses. Even like, yes, I'll help you, and then he does help them, but you're still like being strung along the whole way. I only wanted to bring that up because I saw how much people complain about it on Twitter, and it's like it was intentional because then he's creating tension because
what were they complaining about?
that
That
they
it
saw
was
the
that-
twist coming, and I'm like, it's not.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant to be like a Shyamalan-esque twist, you know. It was like
Yeah.
it was.
No,
so
I
when
mean
you have
like
a-
that's
when-
like that's
It was to
filmmaking,
create
right?
tension
Like,
through the
that's
whole
like,
final scene.
that
Yeah,
is-
it's broadcasted way before that. When Walter and when we see David for the first time and we realize that it's David, he has this long, scraggly blonde hair. And the next scene, you see that he has cut his hair and dyed his hair back brown to look exactly like Walter's. So, I mean, it's an immediate, like, there's a narcissistic, very, symbiotic situation happening
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is very intentional. And that's, the last third of the movie.
Yeah. So that
One thing I got to ask here because Cece brought it up: why do robots grow hair?
Well, because these are humans 2.0. They're not like robots. They're made
They're
to
like nanobots or whatever, you know. It's,
yeah. they've
like
got-
they-
No,
The
Like,
best
the
part
whole
of that
thing
is
was-
that it
is-
just makes me imagine like what a robot with a really bad haircut looks like. It's like a bowl cut.
No, we
I think
saw.
it's a Philip K.
He has a
Philip
pretty
K.
bad
Dick
haircut.
novel, actually.
All right, so
Yeah.
but to the people that thought that was too telegraphed and stuff, I mean, come on. Majority of the second act was was all about building David up as this ultimate villain. If they are not going to carry him out of there was zero
Right.
point in that, and they have wasted an hour of your time.
right,
There's
and
no way it wasn't going to be anybody but David.
you know,
I
and,
think
but
the
what he does
interesting
is
thing-
he plays with it in a subtle way, right? Like
he does. I mean,
he's
it's very
intentionally
skillfully done.
he's intentionally playing with the audience, and because you don't see Walter win the fight, that's your telegraph that Scott wanted you to be unsure about which robot it was, because otherwise
Yeah.
you would have seen Walter win the fight, and that would have been it, or you would have seen David win the fight. But
Yeah,
Right.
but to Andy brought up. I think it was Andy that brought up a point when we were emailing back and forth about this, that like both this and Prometheus have a really like nihilistic trajectory. Like the way that they end, the way that both of those movies end, they're very much like blah,
Yeah.
bummer endings that kind of.
this movie is crazy dark. Like in the end,
I mean,
you're
it's
like,
crazy
"Fuck."
dark, and actually, it's in terms of like sci-fi endings. I think it was awesome. Like, I actually thought it was like a really kind of a cool ending, even if it was sort of telegraphed. I love the visual.
So
It's so
a
like
whole bunch of human popsicles just swaying.
Oh, I
through.
know.
I mean, it's just like it's almost cartoonish in a way.
Yeah.
But I kind of liked it for that. Reason.
I thought it was
but-
a great ending.
here's
And
what
we can talk about the sort of box office, I guess, implications of that. But it's like it is interesting because if I'm a sort of person who's not, which I am, like a person who's not super, just tied to alien lore, or I don't really care. I'm just kind of like trying to take the whole thing at face value. I appreciate a really good sci-fi bummer ending, but it's interesting that like this and Prometheus both went with like kind of bummer endings. So like it's challenging you to like go along with the whole thing.
here's what
And
I want
it's just sort of interesting is like that is the one thing that compromises this movie's kind of standalone quality, is that like if you know the kind of overall vibe of these movies, like if you saw Prometheus and whatever, you sort of know that this movie's ending is just going to be a total fucking bummer, and so you don't necessarily buy into the characters the way that you would normally, because like if you're aware of the presence of David and you're aware of the presence of Walter, and you are kind of like following just like the overall theme of the thing, you sort of know that they're fucked. It's just a matter of like
Well,
how do they
yeah,
get fucked.
well, and guess what?
You're
Guess
going
what?
along for the journey because you know where it's going to end up.
Guess what? The
Right.
next movie's not going to end well either, Mark. Not to
Yeah.
break it
Yeah.
to
Right,
you.
they're just never gonna.
But
yeah, right,
here's
this is
really
not
what
an
here's really what I would
optimist
like to do right
franchise.
now, because we're already an hour in and there's just so much to talk about. We all have a ton of thoughts, but we are blessed tonight to have two very intelligent people on the show. I am not too proud
This
to
is
say.
like a battle royale. Like, are we going for
well,
it?
no, I'm not.
I'm
I'm not.
offended, by the way.
I'm not-
Just
Yeah, I
don't
know.
point that out.
I know you're not talking about me, Eric.
Listen, I'm not too proud to say that they are both smarter than I am. So
We have two people who
here's what
don't
I-
breathe from their mouth.
here's what we're gonna
so-
do, because I think that I think that Cece has some interesting thoughts on the kind of meaning of these movies as far as like creation and kind of wanting to know the nature of your existence kind of thing. And I think that Andy also had some interesting thoughts about the overall tone of these films, but also some criticisms of the way they're put together. And I wanted to get to that. So, Cece, do you want to kind of talk about some of the things you were talking about over email today?
Yeah. So kind of I'm trying to think of a good place to start, but
Let's talk
basically,
about David. Like talk
yeah.
about David's importance and his relationship with Walter and that sort of discussion, because that kind of sets the stage for everything.
Okay, so basically, I know we kind of talked about it in email about how David and Walter are kind of set up to be the main characters, or David specifically be the main character of this, trilogy, and how it kind of seems like it's focusing on this artificial intelligence a lot, like, Ex Machina did, and I'm not really sure that that's how I feel about it. I think that kind of what I take away from both Prometheus and Covenant were that at the core of the entire movie, it's more about this God complex of creating a being, and then this being developing its own free will, and the free will is, basically its independence, and how, the servant is usurping the master and just destroying everything that the master has planned. The focus on David, and then David having this twin, is a really interesting play on the narcissism of humanity, and how we expect aliens to look like us, we expect aliens to look, or aliens to behave or have the same type of society that we have, and the interplay between the two of them is really, really interesting. And I'll get to the whole like flute playing scene that everyone is kind of talking about, but David and Walter as brothers, which David specifically brings up, not just like, oh, we're similar. He says hello, brother, to him. So it's interesting, obviously, in terms of this Judeo-Christian, mythos, that they mirror Cain and Abel. And it's really interesting when you find out that in Covenant, David tells Walter that I think he tells Walter, he may have told Watterson. It comes to, we all come to find out that he has sacrificed Dr. Shaw, and that he's tried to basically harvest these, this xenomorph alien through her, and it's failed, which mirrors Cain and Abel. Cain tried to, give a sacrifice to God. God rejected it, and in turn, Cain was like, well, I'm just going to kill my more revered brother, which would be Walter, because Walter is made to be a better version of David, who is very subservient, very
right. They talk specifically about how
he's
David has
less
too much
emotional.
Yeah.
He doesn't have as much humanity as the David version does. So that's really interesting, and it's interesting how they how David talks about he sacrificed Dr. Shaw and he loved her as Walter loves Daniel's character, which the Daniel's character, and I think Andy brought up, we don't really get a whole lot of development in her character. But if we're talking about Judeo-Christian mythos, the book of Daniel is the apocalyptic visions chapter in the Bible. So it's really interesting that she's this bystander, essentially, that's seeing, what David's planning, and she's just kind of, stuck to watch it. Like, she can't really do a whole lot about it. Aside from Judeo-Christian lore, it's really, really exciting to see some Norse mythology brought into a movie, and David and Walter in their kind of flute, like, intimate scene with one another. David is trying to teach Walter how to play the flute, and he is trying to teach him how to play Das Rheingold, which is, I know I didn't say that properly, but is a Wagner musical drama. And it's basically the gods entering Valhalla. So in Norse mythology, the servant Loge, which is actually could be Loki and other mythos, Loge is the servant kind of ally to these gods who are having a battle over a ring, but that's kind of neither here nor there. But he realizes that he really hates the gods. He thinks that the gods are greedy, that they're selfish, they're very self-serving, and even tells the audience multiple times, like, I want to burn them to the ground, like I hate them, like I can't wait for them to get what's coming to them. And at the end of the drama, we realize that all the gods are dead and that the glory of the gods is only an illusion, which really boils down, I feel like, what Scott is trying to say with his nihilistic view about Prometheus. Like, Prometheus, a covenant, we think that, you know, just because we meet our makers, that it's going to give us all these answers that we want, but there are no answers. Like, the questions that we have don't matter. And Valhalla doesn't really exist. Like, that's just something that there's this vast emptiness full of things, but there's never an end. So
yeah, and that's
basically,
this idea in these films that is really fascinating to me, and I liked about liked but slash it's super depressing, but like in,
right.
in Prometheus, it's like the whole thing is about this wide-eyed, epic, kind of emotional search for meaning and for your creator, and then he wakes up and swats them away like flies, literally. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think you go into this movie, I did, hoping for some more answers, and a disappointment, but I'm kind of fascinated by the choice, is like we don't hear from the engineers. I don't, and I don't know that I expected to explicitly, but we don't get the chance to learn anything more about the engineers because we find out that they were just totally murdered before the movie even starts. You know what I mean?
Right.
And there's something
But I
I
think
really.
that's a really interesting choice, though, on Scott's
It is, yeah.
on Scott's behalf, because he tells you up front, you're never going to get the answer. Like, everything that you want is already gone, and that's the process of time. Like, you're not ever going to have those answers.
Never even get to hear those smooth people speak.
And based on what I know of the engineers, I don't think we would have liked the answer anyway. But yeah,
Right,
that's a cool, like, fascinating thread to me, is this idea that the answers are unknowable. So like in the film, that manifests itself by the ways he chooses to cut us off from the answers, but it's really a kind of larger way of saying, like, it doesn't matter how far we fly or what planets we can go to or what we discover, we'll never have enough of the pieces to satisfy the longing that sent us out on the journey in the first place.
And I think that that's Scott's process of world building and cutting us off from those answers really drives the plot of these movies anyway, because you keep thinking, like, okay, well, we're going to meet the engineers. We don't meet the engineers. We, see what David's doing. Well, David's killed all the engineers, so now we're moving on. So you just kind of ping pong back and forth, off these planets into space. And that's just kind of how life is in general. You start going one way.
Yeah.
Just kidding. So.
Andy, talk to me about, you had some interesting thoughts kind of playing off of Cece's discussion earlier in the email about this worldview and the sort of like you described it as very nihilist. And I know when you say that, unlike me, you actually know what that means. So I want to talk about that, but then also, talk about that and the aspects of it you find interesting, but also your issues with the world building, like, and it's sort of like the way that it can be a little haphazard.
Sure. I mean, this movie, like, in particular, the first third of it, I think is, like, actually, like, super strong. There is a opening credit sequence that's kind of divorced from the main narrative, in which David is speaking with Guy Pearce's, like, Wayland. It's a flashback sequence in which David kind of names himself. And so there's very much this, like, really well orchestrated sequence and, like, very, like, stylized mise-en-scène about David exploring these different ideas of, like, quote unquote high art. And he uses those ideas of high art to figure out that, like, yes, this is who I am. He actually, like, looks at the literal sculpture of David that Wayland has in his office and, like, uses that for his name. And so at that point, you're kind of already, as a viewer, keen into the fact that, like, oh, David sees existence and humanity in these very, very kind of like high art, highbrow
Mm.
terms. And so that very much in a certain way kind of feeds into his, I don't want to call it a worldview because it's not necessarily a worldview because that implies that
But like his
he is like a,
psyche.
yeah, that exactly. Like it's one of
His,
those things that's,
his
I feel like
wetware.
it's, what'd you say?
His wetware.
His wetware, yes. Well, I mean, like that's actually like a really good reference because I feel like that this movie and what Scott is interested in, it actually bears more resemblance to Ex Machina. Like it's much more concerned with this idea of like theology and like ontology and like what it means to actually like exist and like be in the world. And that's the stuff that personally like I find like more interesting in this. But it's when it tries to juggle that with the idea of like why the xenomorphs exist, it just feels so incredibly awkward and clunky.
I at
Because,
times get the feeling that this was a story and a set of ideas he's wanted to explore for a long time,
Right.
and at some point melded that with the idea of like, oh shit, people would give me money to make alien movies, like because the
Right.
rest of it just seems like you could make an entire series without the alien, and I almost would like be fine with that.
And
well, in
I agree
particular,
with you.
wait,
I was just gonna say I agree with you too because it's hard to like. It's taken me several times of rewatching Prometheus and then kind of comparing it to Covenant that you've got these other aliens but you don't know how they play into our world or like the humans aspect of anything, and you don't. There's no hard connection that's really visible to anyone.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, like in particular, in the first the first opening sequence in which the disaster befalls the colonization ship, there's a line in which actually Walter says like it was a random event, like we cannot gauge for this, and that's pretty much like kind of like that's the point where you set your theme, right? Like you set your theme early on, like that's our founding incident in our narrative. But then you keep having these conversations between these robots in which they're like just literally talking about all of the ideas this movie is interested in. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of people we don't really know and don't really care about are slaughtered by an alien.
Well, it's like
It's just like
it's this very weird sort of meta thing going on where it's clear to me that, like you guys said, that Ridley Scott's vision of this movie is actually the conversation between the two robots,
Yeah.
where most of the people watching this movie are watching it for like all of the crazy alien shit that's happening. It's like there's something more happening that is there, but the movie's called Alien Covenant, and I just like I was listening to the episode last week and I love John's joke about like people love tacking on random words that people don't really know what they mean on the end of the movie.
Well,
like,
Covenant
which I
is a
feel like-
blood promise between a god and his servant.
Would you
I was gonna
stop?
say like
If
that's
they
the
call this-
interesting.
If they call this movie like Prometheus, I made a joke on Twitter. It's like, they should have called this movie like Almost Alien or Prometheus and like this, like if they called this movie Prometheus 2, I wonder if people would be less disappointed, right? Because
They should have just called it Covenant, because that wasn't it the
that's
name
what
of
I
the wasn't
thought.
it the name of the ship also?
What?
So it should
Right.
wasn't the name of the ship, so they should have just called it Covenant.
Yeah, they should have.
Right, but so like well that's
Or
an
Prometheus
interesting.
Covenant. How about that? Let's just throw some
Prometheus
words.
Covenant.
Let's just
Yeah.
do it. All the punctuation. But like that's an interesting point because it's actually kind of the reverse, right? Like it should be Covenant like colon per alien is what it
Yeah.
should be.
Requiem for
Because-
an alien.
Yeah, because I mean if we think about the core Alien franchise, like like 1, 2, 3, kind of 4, like those are all movies that have the alien, the xenomorph, as like an antagonistic force, and you don't know anything about it. So why make a movie that explains that there's nothing to know about the thing that you don't know anything about? It
Well,
doesn't
Andy,
make
you
any...
see that the xenomorph's mom was a stripper and his stepfather was abusive,
It
so he
made him
became a
sad.
killer.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that, and I agree. I think that he's using the just the unknown aspect of life and
Well-
experiences in general, and it was like, oh well, this is an unknown, so this unknown variable could be aliens, And like Eric said, I'm going to get paid to make an alien movie, so I'm going to weave this in
I
now.
also
Right.
like
Which, I
as
mean,
as
like,
a
I completely like give him credit for that. Like, whatever, do your thing, get paid. I mean, like, the dude's like multi-millionaire,
Homeboy,
but
and
it doesn't
also not for nothing, he's
mean your movie's
79 years old.
good. Right.
He's like,
I know.
Right.
I couldn't believe he's 80.
honestly,
Like,
there's something.
what?
he
there-
is
there's
David. He's like barfing out these little alien movies. Like,
there's
pulling
something
them
I
out of
have
his
to,
mouth.
and this goes to Mark talking about the ending and the just the depressing nature of everything, but I kind of have to give it to him for making this whole series be about this question of God and creation and what it means, and his answer being "fuck you." And
Yeah.
like, and just staying on that theme so hard. Like, oh, you thought you were gonna get answers in this one after the bummer ending of Prometheus? Guess what? It's an even bigger bummer, and the only beings in the universe who had the answers are now murdered, and they're in
Well,
ruins. Now,
I think it's just the luxury of being old. When
Now-
you're old, you can say "fuck you." I can do what I want.
I would
Just-
also
Or you
say,
can also make a movie like The Martian that's completely like some kind of like egalitarian, like utopian vision, right? I mean,
Right.
like the fact he made The Martian in between these two movies is crazy.
I would
Well,
al-
you know, he had a palate cleanser.
and The Martian,
Right? Yeah,
I really
yeah.
like
No,
The
he's ready
Martian.
for the dark
The
shit.
Martian
Yeah,
is
exactly.
The Martian is really good. Like that's a fun movie, and
Oh, yeah,
but
we
again,
reviewed it
like
on
he
Sophistical
grows
Cinema.
potatoes with poop.
but you can see too. But even in that, you can see like his fascination with the near to medium term of space travel and what that means for man, like how we're going to
Do
be
you
able to
think
deal
that
with
Ridley
it.
Scott has enough money to fly to space? Because I feel like he's done so much shit about space. We should probably get him in space. at some
I
point.
think Ridley Scott is going to be that guy in Contact who like funds the second project, you know?
Mm.
You know,
That's-
I
yeah.
I
Yeah.
also like the idea that you know,
Nobody's going to say that Ridley Scott's going to be is actually working on going out like Whalen, pursuing.
Oh,
Right,
yeah,
right.
not bad,
life.
not bad.
He'll just have his head encased in a
Yeah,
so to
he'll be
me,
the first head in a jar like Futurama.
yeah.
to me, like, you know, even I think like shortcomings aside, I am super happy that this entire series is turning out to be about David, because really like a mistrust. I mean, these themes of like mistrusting AI literally go all the way back to the first film, right? They're huge integral parts to almost every film in the series. It
Right.
doesn't play out quite like this, but that's there, you know. And I love, and it's something I think they could have. There's something to the religious aspect because it's kind of paid lip service to in the beginning and not really played through, especially when you consider like really like the Prometheans, right, are God in this scenario, and we're their creation, and then David's our creation, and then
Mhm.
David destroys God basically, right? Like
Right.
that is really interesting, and I actually think, as heavy-handed as some of the stuff in the movie is, I think that there could have been a finer point made on that aspect and what it means, and also like just that basic idea of and how it plays into the human character's religion, because
Mhm.
that stuff is put out there and then it kind of falls away once alien murder starts happening, other than like a throwaway line about like you got to have faith, and the guy's like, oh
Right.
thanks, that was cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's really interesting that he had that the new captain, that Billy Crudup's character is the only man on the ship who is a man of faith, and like it's blatantly said, like it's a throwaway line, that no one else is as religious as he is or is as faithful, and the whole reason they go to this planet is because he has faith that that's what that's going to be their new home. So I agree with you, like it could have been a little more delicately put to
Yeah.
get his point across.
Well, or I just did get more into it. Like that's like
Right,
it's
yeah.
obviously that those are the most important themes, and it's something that I don't know, maybe an extended cut will address a little more. I want to
Mm-hmm.
go. I'm gonna go read in this after about what was in the Prometheus cut, because that was another film where there were themes brought up that were not fully kind of realized in the end.
Mhm.
But
You know,
and,
something,
like, one-
something that interesting that just I wanted to interject here. A thought that just occurred to me as Eric was talking about how this movie is clearly all about David. This prequel is all about David. We know where we're heading. We're heading to Alien. It's going to dovetail in there. We have the theme in here about Alien is Human 2.0. Walter is Human 2.1, 2.2, where they've tried to modify it a bit. He's a bit more subservient and stuff like CC talked about earlier. We get to Alien and you have we had Lance Henriksen as the android, correct? He is not like either one of those. So there's some interesting stuff going on there, Wayland wise, as far as the bots and stuff like that goes. And there's more changes in there that's in it up there. And he's more David than he is Walter. So that could have some interesting aspects on a third movie as well.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't think about that, but it'll be interesting to see where or how it ends up that way.
Yeah.
Very nice. We could talk about this movie forever, but I'm a sleepy old man, and Casey's got to go soon. So we want to wrap it up. Mark, very quickly, we made some box office recommendations last week. I lost for sure.
Andy won because he only guessed $1. Price is Right.
Price is
He's
Right.
the winner. He's going to Greece
son.
on a cruise.
It didn't. I mean, it
With the
All I
new
wanted-
dishwasher.
so what do we got?
I just want a jacuzzi.
So what do we
just
got?
a jacuzzi.
What did it make?
Okay, so the interesting thing, and I'll try to hammer through this as fast as possible. So Prometheus came out in 2012. I think we said maybe 2010 or 2011, but Prometheus, its opening weekend, made $51 million domestic on a budget of $130 million, so a pretty substantial budget. Alien Covenant, by comparison, made $36 million on a $97 million budget.
Yeah, which makes me
So-
nervous. Like, I hope they make another one. I hope they make the last
Yeah.
one because I just want to see it at this point.
I mean,
I think he
eventually,
can fund it himself.
It may be
Yeah.
another 5 years.
I mean,
Yeah, right.
Prometheus, all told, Prometheus made $126.5 million basically on a $130 million budget. So, I mean, this has a chance to maybe make its money back, like
Well,
internationally,
Yeah,
but
internationally, you slap Alien on something. I also got to think that this thing will make decent rental money and that sort of thing. You know, like, you may not want to see Alien in theater, but if there's a lot of people who would see it in a red box and go, ooh, Alien.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I also got to think too, though, that Ridley Scott is the caliber of filmmaker, and his legends kind of behind them. He had this planned out, obviously, from the beginning. He had a vision of where he wanted to go. Probably didn't have it all outlined or anything when he sold this to the studio. And he seems like the type that says, I'll let you guys buy this movie, and we're gonna make this movie, but you got to let me make all three of them.
Yeah.
Because
Right,
Prometheus
right,
wasn't
right.
a big windfall either.
Right.
So, and they still let him make this one. Like I said, it may be 5 years while they wait for, to work up the funding for it. But I have a feeling he's got it in writing that he gets to make his third movie.
That'd be smart. He is a baller,
Yeah.
so he probably does. You're right. If he waits another 5 years to make this, I will be 40 years old. So there's that.
Welcome to my world.
well, also too, like not for nothing, Guardians of the Galaxy was still like pretty high up on the list this week. So as people end up seeing that movie, it's possible that this could get like
Yeah.
a very
Guardians was
small
tough.
bump of people that have seen it.
Well, unfortunately, I think the reviews have been wrong. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, the reviews have been negative. So they
Got 72% on Rotten Tomatoes, bro.
Yeah, that's not too bad. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen way worse.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have.
All right, guys. We got to wrap it up here. Very nice discussion on Alien Covenant. Andy, would you recommend this?
Maybe. I don't know.
Mark?
Yeah, I mean, if you have weathered the spoiler storm, I think it's decent fun. We actually barely talked about the like Danny
The actual-
McBride
Yeah.
and anything that happens in the movie. We talked a lot
There's
about
a
the
lot
larger
to-
implications. There's
Yeah.
a lot of kind of fun horror reaction in this.
Yeah.
It sort of happens near the end, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd say yeah.
Casey?
Yes, it's not as bad as everybody says.
CC?
Yeah, it's fun.
I really enjoyed this movie. I think this is a flawed but ultimately really fascinating series, and I say thumbs up. If you like Prometheus, go see this one. Check it out in the theater. If you didn't like, if you were like way anti-Prometheus, I don't know that this is like gonna bring you around. But I would
Yeah.
I would implore you to come over to our side of the fence. We have cake and pie.
I
Hey,
would
real
implore
quick.
you to talk to a friend that knows that movies are fake, and you should just deal with it.
Real quick, as I think of it, what would happen, do you think? What would the outcome be of if a face hugger mated with the monster from Life?
Oh my
Oh,
god!
I did- I actually
did think- I did
That's
think
so
about-
many arms.
I did think about Life. I did think about Life because it made me go like, wow, Life was just super aping on Alien hard.
Well,
which
I
was
thought
obvious,
about
but-
Life because someone in the email thread was talking about the gestational period, and I was like, well, the Life monster turned from an alfalfa sprout to like a tentacle dog in like a night. So I don't know what you guys are so mad
Yeah.
about.
Oh man, it was totally my fault. I couldn't get off of it.
All right, guys,
Yeah.
we gotta take
Andy's very concerned with gestational periods.
All right, guys, we
I
gotta
like
take
to
a
take my
break here
temperature.
to do fan mail. So let's do just that.
He was a quiet guy, a bit of a loner, and a really big hockey fan. Let TNT give you the creeps with 5 of the best Friday the 13th movies, all in one night. Try and survive a Friday the 13th marathon, starting tomorrow night at 8 on TNT. Brought to you by Godzilla.
This is Jake Busey. You're listening to the Bloody Good Horror Podcast.
Send your emails to info@bloodygoodhorror.com or hit us up on Twitter at BGHorror with the hashtag AskBGH. And don't forget to pick up back episodes of the show at podcast.bloodygoodhorror.com.
And we are back. One year when TNT did a Friday the 13th marathon, they did these incredible vignettes where they took it literally, like it was a Friday the 13th marathon, and like somebody was holding out water, and then Jason runs through the frame and chops their arm off, and then keeps running. Like, and every
That's
vignette,
amazing.
every vignette for like 12 hours was like marathon related. It was. I wish I could find it somewhere, but
I miss old school TV where they were like, tune in at a certain time because you're definitely not DVRing this. Be by the TV at 8 p.m. on a
There-
specific date.
honestly, there really is something to that I miss about like just turning on the TV, man.
Is
Watching.
I
Monster
know.
Vision still a thing?
No, it's not. I think he's too old at this point.
Only in your heart, Monster
Yeah.
Vision is you. You are.
Yes.
All right, fellas. We actually have we did get one email, but it was kind of spoilery, and not that we didn't just spoil the whole movie, but I was wondering where exactly the egg came from, and is he retconning the Queen out of the series just to spite James Cameron? So I don't know. That is a good question. I didn't really think about it at the time, but I was like, yeah, I don't know where that egg came from. But where
Yeah.
did any eggs come from, really, Andy?
Well,
This is
I mean,
just-
technically, I guess if you want to like get into it, if he was doing experiments, he could have done some experiment with Shaw's embryos. Who knows?
If
What?
you watch the director's cut of Alien, the eggs are actually in the first one.
Are
Oh,
you
so see-
saying that that's a human lady egg plus a
Yes.
xenomorph puff equals like a real egg?
Yes,
So
that's what I'm
basically-
saying.
That's
Hey,
fucking science.
that
I'll
sounds
buy
like
No.
that sounds like
Well,
science
for
to
me,
me.
Put
Well,
that in
yeah,
a
kinda.
textbook.
this is basically just like a Pokemon
Yeah.
thing, right? Like that's all of these movies are anymore.
Cece, I really want you to write an alien biology textbook.
I mean, if it were more on the spiritual symbolism side, then yes. But once you start getting into like actual biology, I'm like, how does this work?
I mean, as I established, movies are fake. We could just make
Oh,
this shit
okay. Well,
up.
then hell yeah, I will
Yeah.
make it all up all day.
Bloody Good Horror presents the alien biology textbook.
Yes.
People would be so mad.
Presents lady eggs and xenomorph
Plus,
babies.
yeah. Just a
Stitch
little-
it together.
Yeah, no, I get it.
All right, Mark. No more emails.
Girl.
Let's info@bloodygoodhorror.com if you have emails. But let's talk about Twitter quick and then call it a night.
Oh, you're really giving me the signal that you're done. But we have 2 hashtags we use on the Twitter here. So one of them is BGH Classics. If you are listening to back episodes, which you can do if you are a patron at patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror, and you hear something ridiculous that you think you should bring to our attention, which does, we've said our manner of ridiculous things over the years. So tweet it to us with the hashtag BGH Classics and try and cram the episode number in if you can, and we will read it on the show. This first one is from JHar0. This is Eric, a quote from Eric from episode 291 on Godzilla. I'm going to assume he's got some sort of dick. The question is, where does he store it?
Valid question. You really there was not enough information given about anatomy in that movie, so we were just filling in the blanks.
sort
Add
of
it to the
feel-
biology book.
This is a theme that comes up in BGH Classics often. I'm not sure if that was Eric or me. That may have been me. I think people confuse our voices sometimes. That
No,
sounds like
no.
a thing I would say.
Don't
more
take
than
don't
thing
take
Eric
credit
would.
for my funny joke. Screw you.
No, I'm gonna take credit for all of them. If it's something funny that Eric said, it was.
Because I think
actually
it was
me.
about how alligators like it's like tucked up in and then it like comes out.
Oh yeah, there's
Yes,
like
it
a
goes in.
fingernail thing, right?
Fair.
It's like a
Red
convertible.
Rocket.
Learning
Next
so
one.
much tonight.
Next
I
one.
thought a lot
Uh,
about this.
Also from JR0, doesn't have an episode, but it says to continue with the dick theme. This is a quote from Joe. It says, "Look out, buddy. If you're not gonna get an erection, we'll find someone who will."
Jesus.
That
sounds
was
like-
episode 295. Under
Sounds
the
like
Skin.
something Joe
Actually,
would say.
that does sound like Joe. Not to be confused with Eric or I, who have the same voice. This next one is from Big Ass 3. Okay. From episode 114. Unsure what movie this is. It's a quote from John. Because, I mean, we've all been there. We've all seen the castration.
You know what's I wanted to point out that's funny is like I've noticed that we actually have a handful of people who, like in the BGH mentions, who started Twitter accounts and the only thing they do is BGH Classics hashtag. Like they don't. You're on mute, Mark. Like they don't use Twitter, but they join just to interact with us, which I think is pretty cool.
I was going to say that's how you know we made it.
But you didn't.
I'm
'cause you
not
were
sure.
muted.
I'm not sure where we made it, but we made it somewhere.
I
This
just
next
really
one-
hope you two teach each other how to play the flute.
Do, 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 do. They should have
Yeah.
played My Heart Will Go On. That would have been perfect. This next one. All right. So, Eric, this one is attributed to you, and I'm not going to take credit for this. And you can tell me if this quote is fake news or not. This is from the We Are Still Here episode. It's a quote from Eric. It says, "Where's the pic of me fucking a giraffe corpse?"
Okay.
That seems like fake news to me.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it for BGH Classics. Thank God.
Okay.
Also, we use the hashtag AskBGH. If you have a question, no matter how dumb it is, go ahead and tweet it to us with the hashtag.
I don't
AskBGH.
think I want to go that far, but
Oh no! Please send us
Should
the
have some
dumbest question
standards.
you can think of,
There are no dumb questions.
and we will do our best to read it on the show with a somewhat legitimate answer, depending on how tired and burnt out everyone is. So this first one is from Stovall Cody 42. If I get face hugged but take the morning after pill, will I be fine? Just asking for a
no,
friend.
I don't. Maybe preemptively because it happens so fast.
Yeah, I think it's got to be preemptively.
It depends on what movie you're in. If you're in the first one, you should be fine.
Yeah,
but
right.
this one
Right.
definitely
I'm also
not.
pretty sure those do not gestate in the uterus. I'm just gonna go ahead and
That's-
say that.
well, no, but
They
you-
did in Prometheus though. Andy's right because she had an abortion. Remember, she got in that machine and gave
Oh,
herself.
she had a
away.
laser. She had a laser
Yeah.
abortion.
Yeah,
But in this
and then-
movie, there was gestation happening in men. So I
Yeah.
don't know where that. I shudder to think where that's happening.
the movie Junior.
Christ, that's what happens when I eat wheat. All right, this next one's from Skizbot. Sorry if it's been asked before, but who made / where did you get the rad BGH intro music? I want to listen to it forever.
Ah, man.
Beats Antique is the name
yes.
of the.
Wow, good callback, Mark. Yeah,
Yeah, man, I've been on a couple episodes.
Beats Antique, they're like one of them digital bands the kids listen to, and they like over the course of a weekend they decided as a fun exercise to just like pick an existing theme and do a riff on it, and over like 48 hours or whatever they came up with this Friday the 13th thing. We try to give them credit. I think there's credit on the site for using it. And then in the very beginning, there's a brief little snippet that's actually from the Friday the 13th NES game. The menu music or something, I don't know, whatever. Which actually, that game, even though it's awful, but has some great music to it.
If you want to know who did the voiceover in the Beer Guts bumper from last week, that was me. That was me that did that.
Beer guts.
Get that guy
Okay.
some work.
Seriously, I have some. I can only do one character.
Wait, ready?
It's
Ready?
a. Oh.
Beer guts.
The character is Redneck Beetlejuice. It's the only character I can do. And,
Mark, I've got some
Holy
monster
shit.
truck rallies I need you to promote
Holy
for
shit!
me.
It
You do
is.
that?
It
that
totally
in.
is Redneck Beetlejuice. That's really
Yep.
funny.
that's the only voice I've got. Sorry, guys. All right, next one from Skizbot.
What do you think?
Blade Runner.
Do I qualify?
up?
Sorry, that was my Beetlejuice.
That was bad. Play- this is
Off the rails.
this is from Skizbot. Blade Runner 2, Goonies 2, Top Gun 2, huh? What sequelless 80s film do you want to see a sequel to?
I mean,
Risky business.
Monster Squad.
Pretty in Pink too.
Pretty in Pink.
Breakfast Club too.
There
Sure.
you go. We've got to be pretty close to a Monster Squad remake, right? Like
It'll happen.
Universal's like cranking out
Well,
these like
yeah, probably
super-
But I
not.
thought that there was some
Well,
talk of that not too long
No,
ago.
but probably not. I bet because even if you remember, like when they did Monster Squad, they had to dance around. Like, there's a reason why Frankenstein looks so weird because they tried to get the rights and they couldn't, so they had to make like a
Oh,
non-Frankenstein.
so it's not even
Frankenstein.
Universal. It's like
So that's why his head is rounded and like the bolts are in a different place. Like they had to do a different thing. They basically had to claim, because you can still do something and claim like, oh, this is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but because of that, you can't make it look like the classic Universal thing. And obviously Dracula, you can call back to Bram Stoker and all that. So I guess like maybe you could, but like Swamp Thing, like the creature, that's definite. Like, I don't know, maybe that's in public domain. It's so old, I don't really know. But
I think that might be.
But I think especially now that they're doing this cinematic universe and doing the like with Tom Cruise and all this crazy shit, I think you're gonna have way trouble making that happen without getting lawyers just shutting you down.
You know, it would be another good '80s movie with to have a sequel for is Cocktail. Speaking of Tom Cruise,
By the way, too, there's an extended trailer for that Mummy movie now, and it looks awful. Like it looks even worse than just from the teaser, which is impressive.
it's such a weird direction for Universal to go in, because like we are in this really weird meta time where people are like really into super nerdy properties, and this is just like the most like fucking early 2000s new metalish rendition of all of these Universal characters.
It's
and
so baffling. Like I don't understand who it's for. I don't understand who they think is like gonna
Yeah.
pay to see this movie.
I don't know. I mean,
will.
like I had to sit through Tom Cruise for 5 minutes talking about how excited he was about it at the theater.
I can
Yes,
only
that's
get
true.
I can only get jazzed up for a movie if I know it's literally hemorrhaging money as I'm watching it. So
You're a sick man, Mark.
Yeah, I'm a special kind of movie viewer. All right, next one is also from Big Ass 3. The fuck? I think this is a question for me. It says, is Jinder Mahal the jobberiest jobber ever to win the WWE title? So for those of you who are uninitiated, there is a gentleman who has previously been cast as a bit player in WWE who just won the world title, and because they're doing a big push in India, and he is Indian. He's actually Canadian.
Well,
but he's a Canadian of Indian descent.
real travesty is that there's 12 different titles, so it doesn't even matter. Like they're totally mean to me. I don't. Someone who's just started, as someone who just started paying attention again, I find the like 20 title thing really weird and baffling.
I mean,
Eric
understand. And I've had conversations about this. Like, I actually don't watch the TV shows that much anymore. I do watch the like network specials sometimes. I don't know, man. Wrestling is cyclical and also fake. So like, if you find yourself getting mad about it, just be like, oh fuck, this is a TV show, and then go do something else. I don't know.
Just make another Alien movie.
People get mad about lots of things, Mark.
I know, but it's like
I get mad about people who get mad about Alien Covenant. So what does that say?
That's right. Yeah.
Everybody got to get mad about
if you're getting mad about people getting mad, you're always going to be mad, you know?
I get more annoyed, I guess, than anything. I don't get angry that much anymore.
I mean, I just like, it's funny, again, patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror. If you listen to the first 100 episodes, we are just fucking seething with nerd rage. We are exploding. And then after 10 years, you're like, fuck it.
Just mellow with age.
Well, this is all fake and nothing matters. And there's going to be another movie next week. And
there's no answers. God's not real.
Yeah. Except for Shrooms. That movie's fucking terrible and no one should ever watch it. Okay, next one is from the Rob O'Neill. How much Fassbender is too much? Answer, Alien Covenant, aka Fassbender versus Danny McBride versus Lost Interest. Listen, I take offense to the fact that there's too much Fassbender.
I mean,
think he's
first
great.
of all, no, there's not. Second of all,
Yeah.
the greatest moment of my life may have been Michael Fassbender making out with himself.
They're better. Yeah, for sure.
Where do you put that?
Let me put it this way.
Where do you put him on the Schnars lookalike scale?
Let me put it this way. When I was watching that scene, I totally forgot about Schnars.
Oh.
Oh, that means it's pretty high on the list.
Seriously, that although that moment is hilarious, like why is he making out with himself? I don't know.
I hope just for the sake of rage, they cast him as 3 characters in the next movie. Fuck it. Oh my god. Next one is from King Township Fit. Who wins in a fight, an outdated but wily Candyman or a more technologically superior one-handed Brock Lesnar?
missed the first
I'm gonna
part.
go with one-handed Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, I mean, if he's technologically advanced, I'll say Brock Lesnar.
If he's technologically advanced.
Is that what he said?
I mean, look
I
at
do
him.
wonder if the technologically superior Brock Lesnar robots still have that horrible penis sword tattoo that runs up his chest. So.
All right, Mark. I don't know how many more questions there are, but pick one, and then we'll do the rest.
No,
next
I'm
week.
gonna read 3, and you are gonna deal with it. Next one is from.
Last question.
No, Andy, that's not a question. Okay, next one's from JD Burge. For real though, why don't more big budget movies use practical effects when they can versus CGI when fans almost always prefer it? I don't know if this is in relation to Alien Covenant. I thought the effects were fucking awesome.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, I really liked the effects, but I do wish that they would do more real.
I think in most cases,
Overall.
even when it can look CG, you're probably seeing some kind of blend, especially in a movie like this.
Although Craig, our new writer Craig on Slack, and I did talk about how silly the alien doing the YMCA out of Billy Crudup's chest looked.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey.
I don't remember that one.
Ragtime gal.
No, not again.
Yeah, I mean, there's an offensive question that I'm not gonna read, and then there's like some more spoilery questions. So Eric, you got your wish. I'm done.
Boom. You know what that means, Mark?
What's that?
Sorry.
Dude, you've been trying to get out of the show since like the first 15 minutes.
It was a good discussion. We had a long, heartfelt talk about Alien Covenant, but that meant it was a little less time for fan mail. It happens. info@bloodygoodhorror.com. We're also on Twitter under the previously mentioned hashtags. Check out Cece's Book Club. That's on the site. What's next week, Mark?
No idea.
We have an open week, so we haven't decided
I'm
yet.
not here, so I don't care.
We talked about staff picks maybe, potentially. And we also have some things in the hopper. So, yeah. And hit us up on Twitter @BGHorror if you have suggestions.
Sophisticult Cinema coming back hot this June with The Handmaiden and In the Realm of the Senses.
Oh, shit. There's nothing more, like, ready for Sophisticult than The Handmaiden.
Pretty pumped.
Yeah.
Pretty excited for
Like,
it.
they made that just so you bring the show
Andy
back.
is the Handmaiden. I've been calling Andy the Handmaiden for years.
How do you think I make my money?
Andy calls his hand the Handmaiden, but that's a whole other
You gotta
thing.
get it any way you can.
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed the show. That's going to do it for our review of Alien Covenant. We'll talk to you next week.
Adios.
See ya.
Farewell.
Bye-bye.